Hi, welcome to Soc AO3 Introduction to Sociology. This week I'll be talking to you about connecting research with sociological methods. Theory and research are closely linked and should not be seen as separate from one another, though they often are. While theories are systematic perspectives on how to view a given topic or issue, research refers to a systematic approach to gathering data using agreed-upon methods that academics have developed. Why are theory and research so linked, given their different qualities? People think using theories. That is, theoretical perspectives often lead the researcher to ask different kinds of questions. For example, functionalists may ask questions that help them attempt to understand how shared values may contribute to harmony in society. Symbolic interactionists may be interested in the impact society and social interactions between people have upon shaping individual identity. Conflict theorists often examine how economic strains or governmental policies disadvantage families. While there are varied approaches within feminism, feminists often attempt to understand the relationship between gender and inequality. And queer theorists research the ways that the idea of normal is constructed in addition to the regulating role that it plays within society. As you can see, there's no single best theory or method for a given research project. Rather, the method one uses will depend on the research questions being asked. The kinds of research question you asked depend on your theory. And as discussed throughout our class this year, the kind of theory you use also is shaped by the kinds of questions you ask. In this sense, research is theory-laden and theory is research-laden. Confusing? Yeah, but totally cool and fun? Maybe. While the theoretical orientation of the researcher plays a role in shaping a research project, to appreciate the design of a research project, one must consider that definitions of knowledge vary. The two dominant definitions of knowledge in sociological inquiry are quantitative methods and qualitative methods, and in terms of their knowledge production, deductive logic and inductive logic, respectively. Now let me just walk you through those. Quantitative approaches involve converting aspects of social life into numbers. They involve inquiring into whether relationships exist between sets of numbers. Researchers using quantitative approaches use tools such as surveys to gather information from respondents. Researchers analyze numeric survey data and attempt to identify patterns within larger groups. Quantitative approaches tend to have larger samples so that researchers can generalize from their findings. Qualitative approaches, in contrast, involve a focus on rich detail rather than numeric relationships. Because qualitative approaches are more in-depth, they tend to have smaller sample sizes. In contrast to surveys, researchers using qualitative approaches often use interviewing and observation as their primary data collection tools. As I said before, these two methods also go along with two systems of reasoning and using logic: deductive logic on the one hand and inductive logic on the other. Deductive logic begins at the level of theory. Within this system of logic, researchers develop a theory to explain or predict a pattern and then test that theory. Quantitative approaches often use deductive reasoning. For example, if I have a theory that taking Soc AO3 will make people awesome, I can survey all 500 of my current students and test their awesomeness at the beginning and at the end of the term. If students are more awesome at the end of the term than in the beginning of the term, I can tentatively deduce that my theory, taking Soc AO3 makes people awesome, is valid. Inductive logic, on the other hand, begins at the level of data rather than at the level of theory. It moves from the collection of data and then to the development of a theory. Qualitative approaches tend to use inductive reasoning. For example, if I want to find out how taking Soc AO3 makes my students feel, I can interview a handful of students and let them open up to me about their experiences in the class. Based on what they tell me, I can hopefully find out that these students are having an awesome time and develop theories about Soc AO3 making people awesome and confident after every lecture. I can then develop my awesomeness theory and then test it through more quantitative analyses. So these two reasoning procedures, they go together, just like the methods. So we've covered the connection between theory and methods and stated the two dominant kinds of methods and the logic that they rely on. But how do sociologists actually come about using these methods, aside from the couple of examples I've given? Let's look at the overall research process step by step. First things first, the overall research process begins with an area that you find interesting. So Lawrence might pick video game play. The next step involves researching the literature on the area you find of interest. The literature is the existing research that's done in your field. A literature review, therefore, investigates what others have done in the general area of interest and helps cement your ideas and questions about the general topic. At this stage, Lawrence will look at what sociologists have said about video game playing, and he might find that many of them have focused on how video game players are often members of subcultures. Following the literature review, the researcher then develops a specific question or set of questions that will be addressed throughout the project. Based on Lawrence's own experience in semi-pro gaming, combined with his sociological finding that gamers are often part of subcultures, he asks, are pro gamers more likely to be members of gaming subcultures than non-pro, noob players? Next, the researcher determines what research method is most appropriate for conducting the research. At this point, Lawrence settles on quantitative methods, since this question's more about numbers. If the research involves human subjects, an ethical application is required. This aspect of the project helps ensure that the project employs appropriate ethical safeguards to protect the subjects. So, Lawrence asks for ethics from his university, as he does not want to cause any undue harm to gamers, not even to the noobs. Once the researcher decides upon a particular research method, so an interview or a survey, for example, the data collection stage can then begin. Lawrence settles on surveys, and then he wanders Toronto looking for gamers in internet cafes and video game stores. Once the data has been collected, it's analyzed. Lawrence scours the data for amazing insights. Finally, the last stage of the research process involves writing up your research and sharing it with others through publication or presentation at a scholarly conference. Lawrence now writes up his research and changes the world! Well, thanks for joining us on our research and methods journey. I'm sure you're all ready and excited to do your own research. Next week, we continue the fun by addressing the study of culture. This is really awesome because we'll learn about norms, values, beliefs, and all the stuff that makes us, well, tick. Sort of. Until next time.